Alright, hello everybody, my name is Billy Camus, and I'm going to be giving you guys my TOK presentation. Alright, so a quote that I actually heard for the first time from my history teacher, Mr. Dirks, as most of you guys know. It is, when one person dies, it's a tragedy, but when 1 million people die, it's a statistic. This was said by Joseph Stalin. And this quote kind of just got me thinking, and if it really does make sense, if it's really true. And so this leads me into my question, kind of my general question is, to what extent can the death of an individual be more influential than the death of mass numbers of people? And we're going to be looking at this from a few different perspectives, like we're going to be looking through emotion and through language. And so just to kind of give you a few examples, one kind of example of a massive murder or a genocide was the Holocaust. It was obviously in mass numbers, not math numbers. The death toll, there's a few statistics about it, were 5 million to 6 million Jews, 300 plus million Soviet prisoners of war, 2 million plus Soviet citizens, 1 million plus Polish civilians, 1 million plus Yugoslav citizens, and then roughly 70,000 people with mental and physical handicaps, and over 200,000 gypsies. And so that's kind of an example of how we look at things in a mass number of deaths. And then now, an example of a more individual kind of death is, one example is Tyler Clementi. Tyler Clementi was a freshman in college. I can't quite remember where he went, but he was gay. And he ended up committing suicide because his former roommate, decided to videotape him while he was having a homosexual encounter with another man. And this threw him into deep depression. He was ridiculed at school, and he ended up jumping off the George Washington Bridge. And so I have one little video real quick, just to kind of show you guys a little about it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Uh-oh. Is it muted over there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I had turned the volume off, so you should put the volume back.
On Jenny's screen at the bottom right, there's a muted thing, probably. On the screen of your computer.
Oh, so let's just start. Go to start.
Another great pause on the face, just like last time. Okay, this is better.
You may remember the crushing story of Rutgers freshman Tyler Clementi, who committed suicide after a video of his gay encounter humiliated him. Well, now his roommate has been charged with a hate crime. And we wondered, when does something cross the line from a college prank to a 10-year felony offense? And 2020 co-anchor Chris Momo tells us.
When Rutgers freshman Tyler Clementi jumped off the George Washington Bridge, he became a symbol of the dark potential of bullying in America. Clementi was only 18, his suicide allegedly a reaction to being outed as gay by live-streaming video on the internet, showing Clementi in an intimate encounter with another man. Police say it was the work of Clementi's roommate, Daroon Ravi, then 19, who used his webcam to spy on Clementi and tweeted friends to watch online. The story sparked outrage. Anti-bullying campaigns like itgetsbetter.org took off.
It gets better.
With President Obama and others posting videos.
And every day, it gets better.
Ravi's alleged use of the webcam and Twitter opened eyes to cyberbullying, showcasing the internet as a potential weapon for bullies. And now, 7 months later,
All right. So that's just kind of a little example. Actually, let me get back. That's just kind of a little example of how an individual can kind of play a huge role in a lot of people's life. How this one kid killed himself because of bullying, and now, as they said, there was a huge outrage because of it. They did a lot of looking into cyberbullying and all that stuff. And now there is the Tyler Clementi Foundation, and this is pretty much just a foundation where they try to just kind of get more acceptance into homosexual culture. There's nothing that they can really, they're just trying to kind of get everybody to be more accepting of the fact that some people are homosexual, and that doesn't mean that they're any less human than us. And so this is just kind of a little foundation that they started because of one individual. And so that. Alright, and so that's just kind of an example of an individual and how they can spark a huge outrage or a huge just kind of influence on people. And so one lens that I want to look at this through was emotion. Sympathy versus empathy. For sympathy, as most of us have discussed, sympathy is acknowledging a person's emotional hardships and proving comfort and assurance. This is more of a kind of comforting relationship, typically between like friends, family, and community, but mostly through the experience of others. Now, empathy, on the other hand, is understanding what somebody is going through because you've either been in their shoes or you can put yourself in their shoes. This is more of a relating relationship. You can really kind of see it through their eyes, and it's more of a personal relationship with someone. And so one of my kind of sub-questions is, in what ways can sympathy and empathy play a role in the perception of a death? And I'm going to open this up for a little bit. Chris?
Well, back to your general question also, I feel like the reason why people mourn more like a single death, or they acknowledge more a single death, is because of the fact that you get like their story behind it, and then you start to relate to them, and once you do that, then you start to have empathy, whereas when you have when you see a statistic of all these people, it amazes you, but you don't know that much about them, so you can't really relate to it, so you have sympathy.
Exactly. It's harder to empathize with 6 million people who were killed.
I'm going to refer specifically to part of your presentation. You had the Stalin quote about how 1 million deaths is a statistic, and you have the numbers from the Holocaust. I know for me personally, when I read about the Holocaust or when anyone mentions it, I feel sad and I feel terrible that that kind of things happen to the human race. But it's incredibly difficult for me to feel a deeper sadness than just, I'm so sorry that happened, because I wasn't there. But so that's just sympathy for me. But for someone whose parents or grandparents or who they themselves went through the concentration camps, reading their story and how they made it through the camp or how they made it through hiding, that inspires more empathy. And they see the 1 million deaths not as a statistic, but as a reality, whereas we see it as just, or I see it as just a number.
I was actually going to get my experience of the people that we had visiting with the guy like drinking and texting and driving or whatever. He passed out on the couch in the auditorium or whatever, that story. I think the reason why it's easier to feel, I don't know, like empathy about one person is because there's somebody else to tell that story. Like, don't get me wrong, there's still people around for like the Jews or whatever from the Holocaust, but once we see them, then we become empathetic. Looking at the statistic, you can't be like, oh, well, these 1 million people play sports, these 1 million people have like jobs with professionals or whatever like that. Nobody's there to tell that story of what actually happened.
Yeah, there's not a human characteristic to numbers. And that brings me into my next lens. I want to look at this through a language perspective and how kind of just the way that these statistics are expressed using maybe words or the way that they're expressed by numbers. And so I kind of did this in, can you go back too? Whoa. Whoa. Go back. Alright. Okay. Alright, so on my first slide with all the statistics, I kind of used a little bit of both of these techniques. As I was going through, I was reading the statistics, and some of them said 5 to 6 million Jews. But then at the same time, this is still the same statistic, written differently. And so you can look at both of these, and just at a quick glance, do you guys have a preference to either one, or does one stick out more to you?
The one with all the zeros is a lot more intimidating. It feels a lot bigger than the word because it just looks bigger and more intimidating.
All right, and that's exactly what I was going to say, was that you can, as we've grown up, we've learned math, And we know that this is the ones place, the tens, the hundreds, thousands, and so on and so